If I stop uploading here, you can find me via my website in the description below. The demon monarchs discussed many things in front of Han Li, but none of them mentioned Han Li in their subsequent discussion. At this point, Han Li had already backed away to the side and was secretly inspecting these demon monarchs. In all honesty, the two most mysterious and unfathomable beings among these four demon monarchs were Liu Zhu and Di Shui. The former was emanating a frosty aura that was extremely unsettling, and he didn't even seem to be a living being. If it weren't for the fact that it was clearly moving and speaking, Han Li would have been led to suspect that he was an inanimate object. The latter was also quite unfathomable to him, as both of the red-robed figures were completely identical in every single way. Their voices, statures, and auras were both completely identical, and both of them were referred to as Di Shui, thereby further adding to Han Li's confusion. As for Mu Qing and the white-haired beauty, Han Li had roughly gleaned their origins. Mu Qing's body was enshrouded in a layer of black that even his bright-sight spirit eyes were unable to see through, but he could glean a faint wisp of green through the black light. In conjunction with the extremely pure, wood-attribute spiritual power emanating from her body, Han Li was almost certain that she was a rare wood spirit demon, but he didn't know what kind of spirit wood her true body consisted of. As for the white-haired beauty, her body contained the densest yin qi that he had ever seen. Furthermore, judging from the conversation between the demon monarchs, Han Li could determine that she was a ghostly demon. As such, the fact that she was able to manifest a body identical to that of a normal person was a sufficient indication of her power. However, Han Li also noticed that Yuan Yao's body also contained dense yin qi, suggesting that she was also no longer a normal human. However, she wasn't a true ghostly being like the white-haired woman, so she had to have gone down a slightly different path. Yan Li's situation was also identical to Yuan Yao's. Judging from the auras emanating from their bodies, the two of them were only at the early deity transformation stage. For them to be allowed to accompany the white-haired beauty with their cultivation bases suggested that the woman truly adored them, or was keeping them around for other purposes. The discussion between the demon monarchs didn't last too long. There were occasional clashes of opinions, but they were quickly resolved through diplomatic votes. After a while, everything had been discussed and everyone got up to leave. Mu Qing rose to her feet and saw off the demon monarchs in person. When the two red-robed beings were on their way out, they just so happened to pass by Han Li, and one of them asked, "Were you the one who destroyed the two puppets I sent out?" Han Li hesitated momentarily before bowing as he gave an honest reply. "They were indeed destroyed by me. I was unaware that they belonged to you at the time, senior, so please don't hold it against me. Hey, a couple of blood puppets aren't significant enough for me to lose sleep over. However, I can't just let you get away with this. Why don't you do me a small favor at some point in the future to make up for this?" Du Shui suggested. Han Li faltered slightly upon hearing this, yet, when he raised his head again, the two red-robed figures had already walked past him as if they hadn't said anything to him at all. Han Li's brows furrowed, and he couldn't help but feel as if he had more trouble on his hands. The white-haired beauty's trio was the final group to depart, and they also walked past Han Li. The beauty merely smiled at him, yet didn't say anything. As for Yuan Yao, she remained completely expressionless, as if she couldn't even see Han Li. In contrast, Yan Li blinked and was looking at Han Li with a contemplative light in her eyes. Han Li's lips suddenly twitched in a barely noticeable manner, following which one of his hands suddenly clenched up into a fist within the sleeve of his robes. As soon as everyone had left, Shui Du turned to Han Li with a smile and said, "Congratulations, Brother Han. Everyone is holding you in very high regard. What is there to congratulate me about? I'm still completely in the dark about everything. Do you know what they were referring to when they were talking about true mastery of my divine Devilbane lightning? Senior Jue, will it actually improve the power of my lightning?" Han Li asked with a wry smile on his face. To Han Li's surprise, Shui Du actually gave him a detailed response. "Hehe, I do actually know a little bit about this. In ancient times, divine Devilbane lightning was the vastly renowned paramount wood attribute divine lightning, and was one of the 5 elemental true lightnings. It specialized in vanquishing devilish chi and all evil creatures, and its power far exceeds that of even my heavenly blood lightning. However, unless this lightning is refined through a special method, the wielder will only be able to unleash a tiny portion of its power. During the reign of the evil dragon race in ancient times, They destroyed all of the golden lightning bamboo they could find, essentially erasing the existence of divine Devilbane lightning off the face of the spirit realm, so its special refinement method naturally became lost. At the very least, I do not know of this method. The evil dragon race. Han Li faltered slightly upon hearing this. He had never heard of such a race in the spirit realm back when he was in human territory. Heh, you've never heard of such a race, right, fellow Taoist Han? That makes sense. Due to the excessively violent and oppressive way through which they treated other races during ancient times, a joint rebellion from all other races toppled their despotic rule. All of the current major races of the spirit realm rose into prominence in the aftermath of that epic war, while the name of the evil dragon race fell into complete obscurity. Jue Du explained, giving Han Li a brief history lesson in the process. Han Li was feeling a little overwhelmed by this information. How had the history books of the human race and flying spirit race failed to record such a monumental event? Despite his confusion, he refrained from asking any questions. By the way, when I say ancient times, I mean well and truly in the distant past. At that point, your flying spirit race hadn't even come into existence yet, so they naturally wouldn't have any records of this piece of history. Xue Du chuckled, seemingly having identified Han Li's confusion. I see. Han Li was immediately enlightened. According to the historical records of the human race, they had appeared in the spirit realm after the flying spirit race, so it was no surprise that they didn't have records regarding this matter either. Just as Han Li and Xue Du were chatting with one another, footsteps sounded outside the wooden hall, and Mu Qing strode in through the doors. Xue Du immediately ceased conversing with Han Li as he made his way over to Mu Qing and extended a respectful salute. Mu Shan nodded in an errant gesture of acknowledgement before sitting back down on her giant golden flower, supporting her chin with a hand as she sat in silence. She seemed to be mulling over a difficult decision, and she didn't say anything for a long while. Han Li didn't know what was happening, so he cast a glance towards Xue Du to gauge his reaction. The bloodworm wore a calm and collected expression on his face, seemingly already accustomed to such occurrences. Listen up, fellow Taoist Han, I don't care what you're thinking, but you have to master the divine Devilbane lightning under my tutelage within these 2 years. Once you do, I'll think of a way to waive the 2-year period you have to spend with that ghost hag, understood? Mu Qing's voice sounded from within the black light. Han Li's expression stirred slightly, and a wry smile appeared on his face as he replied, I'll be sure to do my best. Senior Mu Qing. You'd better do your best, otherwise I won't let you go to that ghost hag without leaving you a memento to remember me with. Mu Qing's voice suddenly became cold and forbidding. Han Li's heart sank and he could only fall silent. 3 days from now, move over to my wood essence cave. I'll instruct you to master your lightning during these 2 years. Xue Du, I'll leave the preparations for the blood sacrifice to you during this time, Mu Qing instructed in an implacable voice. Yes, Mistress. Xue Du was rather surprised to hear this, but he naturally accepted his orders. Han Li also faltered slightly in response. After that, Mu Qing waved a dismissive hand as she said, All right, I'm feeling a little weary, so all of you can go back for now. Han Li and Xue Du could only depart after extending farewell salutes. As soon as they exited the hall, Xue Du suddenly said, Tusk, tusk. You're a lucky man, Brother Han. To think that my mistress is going to instruct you in person. This is a brilliant opportunity for you. Is that so? I don't even know if I can master my lightning in 2 years. Han Li shook his head in a rather gloomy manner. Ha ha ha. The fact that my mistress said what she just did indicates that she has confidence in you. So there's no need to worry, Brother Han. I still have some matters to take care of, so I'll be taking my leave now. Xue Du chuckled before flying away as a streak of crimson light. Han Li stood on the spot and looked on at the departing streak of crimson light. Only after it had disappeared out of sight did he slowly return to his living quarters. Not long after that, Han Li was back in his pavilion. He immediately activated his restriction to prevent anyone from being able to conduct surveillance on him, then sat down on his bed with a dark expression. A while later, he suddenly raised a hand and glanced at his palm. There was a black character around the size of a grain of rice that had appeared on his palm, and upon careful inspection, Han Li discovered that it was the character for Yuan. A peculiar look appeared on Han Li's face upon seeing this. If he had been slightly skeptical about Yuan Yao's identity before, then all of that skepticism had now been wiped away. This character was something that had appeared soundlessly in his hand when Yuan Yao had brushed past him earlier. No trace of spiritual fluctuations had been set off during that process, so even the 4 demon monarchs were unable to detect anything. It was quite astonishing that a mere deity transformation cultivator was capable of doing something like this. Han Li extended a finger before gently tapping the Yuan character on his palm. A flash of green light erupted from his fingertip to wipe this character away. He then withdrew his hands into his sleeves and began to contemplate his situation with an indecisive expression. After a few moments, he suddenly extended a palm again. A low thunderclap erupted as a fist-sized ball of golden lightning surfaced over his palm, and its mass was fluctuating slightly. A series of shimmering strands of electricity were also flashing over its surface. Han Li appraised the ball of lightning expressionlessly before suddenly narrowing his eyes. Chapter 1. 1467. Wood Essence Cave. Many years ago, he'd unintentionally nurtured a shot of golden lightning bamboo, thereby allowing him to refine his azure bamboo cloudswarm swords as well as to attain the divine Devilbane lightning. But never would he have thought that this lightning would have such stunning origins, nor have some kind of special refinement method. If the divine Devilbane lightning really was one of the 5 elemental true lightnings of the spirit realm, and its power could truly be significantly increased, then it would become staggeringly powerful. In that case, it would immediately become one of his trump cards. Being able to master his divine Devilbane lightning would certainly be a good thing, but having to go to this infernal river place was most definitely going to incur a massive risk for him. If he weren't careful, it was quite possible that he could die in the process. Thankfully, it appeared that there were still around 6 years left before he'd have to face that ordeal, so he could carefully consider his situation during that time, perhaps allowing him to devise some kind of plan to avoid this peril. Furthermore, it was quite a surprise to see Yuan Yao again here. Many years ago, she'd been willing to sacrifice her own core formation stage cultivation base to save Yan Li, and that was naturally worthy of respect and admiration. However, after the passage of so many years, it was yet to be seen whether she was still someone who cherished her bond with others. After all, the most fickle thing in this world was one's heart. However, Yuan Yao had refrained from revealing the fact that they were acquaintances, and that was quite a relief to Han Li, even though he didn't have to hide the fact that he was merely impersonating Flying Spirit Tribe being. He still didn't want his true origins to be revealed to the Earth Abyss demon monarchs. Han Li silently recalled all of the memories he had of Yuan Yao. They had met on several occasions, the first of which was in the secret chamber within the Heaven Void Hall. At the time, she was bathing in a spring, and the image of her flawless body flashed through his mind, sending a slight stir through Han Li's heart. However, Nangong Wan's figure then surfaced from the bottom of his heart, and a sense of clarity immediately returned to Han Li's mind. After so many years, if everything had gone smoothly, she would have most likely reached the deity transformation stage in the human world as well. Han Li wondered how long it would take for him to be reunited with his beloved Dao companion here in the spirit realm. Nangong Wan's appearance and voice, as well as the memories of the intimate times they'd spent in the Heavenly South region, flashed through Han Li's mind, and a faint smile appeared on his face as he basked in those warm memories. A long while later, when Nangong Wan's voice gradually faded from his mind, another set of exquisitely beautiful facial features surfaced in his heart, and he was once again lulled into a period of sentimental recollection. After the passage of an indeterminate period of time, Han Li heaved a long sigh and finally returned to his senses as a wry smile appeared on his face. He didn't think that Yuan Yao's appearance would trigger such a long walk down memory lane for him. Thankfully, there wasn't anyone nearby who bore ill will toward him. Otherwise, he would have been in some peril, having been completely absorbed in his memories. However, seeing as he was unable to depart from the Earth Abyss anytime soon, he would always get opportunities to meet Yuan Yao again. As such, he didn't have to be in a hurry to contact her. With that in mind, a contemplative look appeared on his face again. 3 days later, Han Li stood before a small mountain, looking at a strange mountain face, the entirety of which was as green and translucent as jade. A hint of surprise quickly flashed through his eyes. This is the wood essence cave that I cultivate in during the seclusion. There are very few places in the spirit realm with such abundant wood attribute spiritual qi, and those using wood attribute cultivation arts will be able to enjoy rapid progress in their cultivation here. Mu Qing introduced in a proud manner. Han Li had turned up to meet Mu Qing as instructed, and Mu Qing had taken him over several mountains, then entered a restriction that was filled with dense mist before finally stopping in this strange place. They were quite far away from his previous living quarters, and it was quite a surprise that Mu Qing had set up her cultivation venue here. However, the entire green mountain face was as smooth as a mirror with not a single cave to be seen. Han Li swept his spiritual sense over the mountain face several times, but was unable to discover anything more than what met the eye. Thus, a peculiar look appeared on his face. Mu Qing stepped forward and swept a hand gently over the mountain face. Green light flashed over the mountain face, following which a large opening appeared, revealing a green passageway that led straight into the heart of the mountain. The entrance to the passageway had been sealed by a layer green light barrier, and there was also a series of strange runes carved onto the surrounding rock face, creating quite a discreet and mysterious camouflage effect. Han Li was quite flabbergasted to see this. How had his powerful spiritual sense been unable to detect this passageway? It appeared that these Earth Abyss demon monarchs really did have some unfathomable abilities. He was going to have to take extra care around them from now on. Mu Qing led the way into the passageway, having been completely unaffected by the green light barrier. Han Li hesitated momentarily before following suit. The light barrier posed no impediment to him either, and soon after he'd passed through it, the entrance of the passageway disappeared again. Not only that, but the entire green mountain face also turned completely dull and lusterless not long after that. On the other end, Han Li walked behind Mu Qing in this passageway for a long while, before they finally reached a hall that was not very large. The entire hall was empty, and there was nothing else in there aside from 7 or 8 openings that led to other places. As soon as Han Li entered this hall, he could sense the rich wood attribute spiritual qi emanating from the walls around him, and that was something that filled him with both elation and concern. He was elated the wood attribute spiritual qi was so abundant here, and it seemed that with such exceptional facilities, mastering the divine Devilbane lightning in 2 years wasn't entirely impossible. However, at the same time, he was concerned by the fact that Mu Qing was willing to let him use such an exceptional cultivation venue. This indicated that she was intent on keeping him, and it wouldn't be easy for him to escape from this demon monarch's control in the future. Come with me. I'll set up a place for you to stay. You'll be spending the upcoming 2 years in here, and you're forbidden to take so much as a single step out of this wood essence cave. I've already set up an extremely powerful restriction in the surrounding area. Unless I open it for you in person, there's no way that you can leave this place, Mu Qing said in an indifferent voice that was full of confidence. Han Li's lips twitched, but he didn't say anything as he silently followed Mu Qing into one of the passageways that led away from the room. After passing through a large garden filled with strange and exotic plants, Han Li was brought to a large yellow gate that was refined from some kind of unknown metallic material. Mu Qing stopped here and said, "This is a secret chamber that I often meditate in, but I'll let you live in it for now. From now on, I'll instruct you in mastering the divine Devilbane lightning once every 7 days. At midday on the 7th day, just come to the hall to find me. All right, you can go in now. I'm going to another secret chamber. Aside from a few important places that I've set up restrictions at, you can go anywhere you like in here. Thank you for your kindness, senior." Han Li hurriedly expressed his gratitude. However, Mu Qing merely took an indifferent glance at Han Li before departing, disappearing from sight after she rounded a corner. Only then did Han Li heave a faint sigh and strode into the secret chamber beyond the metallic yellow doors. Time passed by in a flash, and a year flew by in the blink of an eye. On this day, within a vast expanse of mist, a strange phenomenon suddenly appeared in the air above a mundane-looking small mountain. Countless dark clouds converged at low altitudes, following which azure lightning flashed amid rumbling thunderclaps. It was as if a fearsome, vicious beast was being born from the clouds. All of a sudden, a black formation that was over 100 feet in size appeared amid a flash of black light on the mountain's summit. 2 humanoid figures appeared, one of which was a slender female with black light swirling all over her body, while the other was an ordinary-looking young man in a set of azure robes. These two were none other than Mu Qing and Han Li. In the instant that the two of them appeared, loud thunderclaps erupted in the air above, following which the dark clouds began to tumble and surge violently. Countless azure arcs of lightning surfaced within those clouds, creating a formidable sight to behold. Mu Chang looked up into the sky with a calm expression and said, "What a coincidence that your heavenly tribulation would arrive at a time like this. You possess the divine Devilbane lightning and have achieved an elementary level of mastery over the lightning, so you should be able to transcend this tribulation with ease. This will also be a good opportunity to further hone your affinity for lightning, and that'll be quite beneficial to improving your mastery of your divine Devilbane lightning. I'll leave you to your own devices now." As soon as Mu Qing's voice trailed off, she abruptly disappeared amid a flash of light. Thus Han Li was the only one remaining on the mountain summit. He could only give a wry smile in this situation. Never would he have thought that he'd be beset with his second minor heavenly tribulation in the spirit realm under such circumstances. Thankfully, he'd been consuming earth-cleansing pills regularly, so he was well prepared to handle this tribulation. The first bolts of lightning to fall were normal azure heavenly lightning, rather than the extremely fearsome two-colored tribulation lightning. Even so, Han Li didn't dare to get complacent in the slightest. After all, this was his second minor lightning tribulation, and it was certainly not something to be scoffed at. Han Li opened his mouth to expel a small azure cauldron, and at the same time, he laid his hand on the back of his head to summon a burst of grey light that created a light barrier around his body. After that, he let loose a low cry as both of his hands balled up into fists. A resounding boom erupted as countless arcs of golden lightning erupted from his body, hurtling up toward the sky. Moments later, a golden net of lightning took shape, and the golden lightning was even more dazzling than the tribulation lightning up above. At the same time, more and more arcs of azure lightning began to appear, and they intensified in brightness at an alarming rate. Finally, countless arcs of azure lightning came crashing down with reckless abandon amid an earth-shattering boom, heading directly toward Han Li. The arcs of lightning as thick as human thumbs, and they rained down in a torrential downpour, crashing headfirst into the net of golden lightning. Kandi made a hand seize, and the net of lightning let loose a loud thunderclap as a blurry golden rune appeared over its surface, then transformed into vortex-like swaths of golden light. A peculiar scene then ensued. As soon as the azure arcs of lightning came into contact with the golden vortexes of light, the former disappeared into the latter in a completely soundless manner, as if the tribulation lightning had been devoured. Thousands of arcs of azure lightning were engulfed in such a manner in mere moments, while a small portion of them struck the golden net of lightning amid resounding booms, only to be deflected with ease. The first wave of tribulation lightning had fallen, and Han Li didn't even bat an eyelid, having withstood this initial wave with ease. Chapter 1, 1468. Capturing Lightning. After devouring so much azure tribulation lightning, the golden net above Han Li's head swelled to several times its original size, encompassing an area over 200 feet in size. As soon as the first wave of tribulation lightning ceased, even thicker bolts of azure lightning materialized up above before crashing down as the second wave. Han Li made a hand seal before extending a finger and rapidly scribbling something in the air with his fingertip. Golden light flashed, and a shimmering golden rune was inscribed in mid-air. Following an explosive thunderclap, the rune transformed into a bolt of golden lightning that hurtled up toward the air. The golden arc of lightning then disappeared into the golden lightning net in a flash, causing the entire net to tremor. The balls of light that were hovering within the net of golden lightning converged toward the same spot to form a vast expanse of golden light, within which runes were shimmering erratically. During this split second, the second wave of azure lightning was already descending with devastating might. The same scenes appeared again. The powerful bolts of azure lightning quickly disappeared without a trace into the vast expanse of golden light. However, the second wave of tribulation lightning was far more powerful than the first, as evidenced by the fact that the vast expanse of golden light was tremoring violently from the lightning strikes while the golden net of lightning continued to expand. Moments later, a series of cracks finally began to appear amid the golden light, and it was slowly being vanquished by the tribulation lightning. Without the golden light posing as an obstacle, the bolts of tribulation lightning struck the net of lightning directly. The two clashed, and golden and azure light intertwined, creating a thunderous commotion. Despite how ferociously powerful the bolts of heavenly lightning were, the golden lightning net remained resolute. managing to keep most of the azure lightning at bay. The occasional stray bolts of heavenly lightning that managed to sneak through were all vanquished by Han Li's divine, essence-fused light. Standing atop the mountain summit, Han Li looked up at the dark clouds overhead, but showed no intention of unleashing his divine devilbane lightning. He seemed to have some other course of action in mind. After a while, the golden net of lightning was finally shattered, and the second wave of tribulation lightning also ceased. However, the dark clouds in the sky were only surging more violently, and within the span of a few breaths, balls of azure lightning had appeared up above. Each ball was around the size of a human fist, and they were clearly imbued with far more power than the bolts from the previous wave of tribulation lightning. Han Li adopted a more serious expression as one of his hands turned white while the other turned black, and he thrust both palms into the air. All of a sudden, the grey light overhead congealed, following which the projection of a miniature black mountain surfaced within it. Almost at the exact same moment, 5 wagon wheel-sized skull projections appeared above the grey light, and all of them opened their mouths in unison. 5 colored flames tumbled forth instantly, forming a protective barrier over the divine essence-fused light. Han Li then let loose a low cry, and the miniature azure cauldron above his head swelled to more than 10 times its original size amid a flash of brilliant spiritual light, transforming into a massive cauldron that was around 10 feet in size. Azure light tumbled within the cauldron alongside an indistinct rumbling sound. The third wave of tribulation lightning came crashing down in a merciless manner. The balls of azure lightning were like massive chunks of hail, and they were far more fearsome than the previous 2 waves of heavenly lightning. However, Han Li had been able to withstand 2-colored tribulation lightning, even when he was only at the early deity transformation stage, so he certainly wasn't going to be fazed by these azure balls of lightning. The lightning balls crashed into the 5-colored flames, and an incredible scene ensued. All of the balls of lightning became extraordinarily slow after entering the 5-colored flames, as if they'd been trapped. In the blink of an eye, over 100 balls of lightning had been frozen in mid-air. Han Li made a hand seal, and grey light erupted from the miniature mountain projection, sweeping up all of the balls of lightning. At the same time, brilliant azure light erupted from the massive cauldron down below, and all of the lightning balls appeared at the cauldron's opening. Countless azure threads then shot forth, dragging all of the balls of lightning into the cauldron. A faint smile appeared on Han Li's face upon seeing this. An hour later, the dark clouds in the air above dissipated, and the lightning tribulation drew to a conclusion. Han Li had already arrived back in the secret chamber of the Wood Essence Cave. He was seated with his legs crossed on a futon, while a small azure cauldron hovered before him. The lid of the cauldron had already been removed, and electricity was flashing within alongside the occasional dull thunderclap. Han Li stared at the cauldron for a while before waving a hand toward it and drawing it into his grasp. He patted the cauldron with his hand, and it tremored before producing an egg-sized ball of lightning. The ball of lightning was flashing erratically, but it was unable to escape from the azure threads by which it was bound. This was the heavenly tribulation lightning that Han Li had procured. This lightning naturally couldn't compare to the golden and silver heavenly lightning that he'd captured in the past, but it was still a lot more powerful than normal lightning. Having been given the opportunity, Han Li was naturally going to secure as much of this lightning as possible to refine some lightning beads with. 1 lightning bead or 2 could perhaps only pose a threat to spatial tempering stage beings, but if a dozen or so were to be hurled at once, even body integration cultivators would be forced into retreat. Aside from the first 2 waves of heavenly lightning, all of the subsequent lightning had been drawn into the Heaven Void Cauldron. There was enough azure lightning in there to refine several tens of lightning beads in one go. However, due to the power of the heavenly lightning itself, these lightning beads were going to be slightly inferior compared to the ones he'd refined in the past. Even so, with so many lightning beads at his disposal, they could serve as one of his trump cards in the face of unforeseen threats. Even though this heavenly tribulation hadn't posed any threat to him, each successive heavenly tribulation was more devastating than the previous one. By his estimations, he would only be able to transcend 7 or 8 more tribulations of this nature before things would get rather out of hand for him. As for the major heavenly tribulations that befell spatial tempering stage beings, even the first of such tribulations were extremely dangerous, and there was no lack of spatial tempering stage beings in history who'd fallen to their first tribulations. However, that was only something for Han Li to worry about in the future. For now, he had to think about how he was going to escape. Han Li's expression darkened again as he considered the perils that he was going to face in the future. During this past year, Mu Qing had truly done everything in her power to instruct him. Furthermore, he was quite proficient in using lightning himself, so he had made steady and fast progress. It appeared that it wouldn't be an issue for him to fulfill Mu Qing's requirements within 2 years. Perhaps it was due to this that Mu Qing had been a lot more benevolent toward him of late, and after instructing him in the way of mastering his divine lightning, she would occasionally answer some of his cultivation questions as well. At her lofty cultivation base, her guidance in cultivation was naturally extremely invaluable to a mere deity transformation cultivator like Han Li. However, Han Li naturally wasn't going to allow himself to be imprisoned just because of the improved treatment he was receiving. During this time, he had snuck around the mountain on several occasions to search for any holes in the restriction, as well as researched potential methods to erase the 4 tracking marks within his body. If he could find solutions to these 2 issues, he'd be able to escape. However, the results yielded by his efforts were very disheartening. The restrictions around the Wood Essence Cave was unimaginably profound, transforming the entire cave into a massive cage from which there was simply no escape for him. Of course, that wasn't to say that he couldn't destroy the restriction by force. After all, his divine essence-fused light and spirit engulfing heavenly flames were both extremely effective in this respect. However, if he were to attempt to do this, Mu Qing would immediately be alerted to what he was up to, and things would not end well for him. As for the tracking marks planted in his body by the 4 demon monarchs, they were even more troublesome. The marks seemed to have taken root in his body and refused to be removed regardless of what he tried. The only way was to use the nascent flames within his body to slowly refine them. But these were marks left behind by 4 body integration stage demon monarchs. Refining them was far from simple. Setting aside whether the demon monarchs that had planted the marks in him would notice what he was doing, even if he were to take a massive risk and forcibly refine the marks, it would still take him at least 3 or 4 years. As such, he was feeling quite depressed. However, Han Li was certainly no ordinary person, and he did manage to devise a feasible strategy. In a dire situation, he could use the powers of his divine essence, fused light and divine Devilbane lightning to temporarily mask the 4 tracking marks in his body. Han Li hadn't tried this method to see if it would work, as doing so would most likely alert the 4 demon monarchs. But with his understanding of those 2 abilities of his, he estimated that there was at least a 70% chance that it would succeed. Of course, this masking effect would only work on a temporary basis. As soon as the 4 demon monarchs sensed what he was doing, they'd be able to forcibly summon the tracking marks from within a certain distance, and he most likely wouldn't be able to conceal himself for long. As such, this was only going to be a last resort. Han Li exhaled deeply as if he were trying to expel all of the frustrations in his heart. He then tossed the miniature cauldron in his hand forward and prepared to begin refining lightning beads. Even though this was a place where Mu Qing had once cultivated, he'd set up restrictions here again, so he wasn't afraid that she'd be able to see what he was doing. Thus, loud thunderclaps erupted within the secret chamber as Han Li set about refining one lightning bead after another. Several days later, a streak of green light flew over the nearby garden, then disappeared in a flash through the doors of Han Li's secret chamber. Only after a long while were doors opened, and Han Li emerged from within with furrowed brows and a peculiar look on his face. This was the date for his weekly lesson. Yet so why had Mu Qing summoned him using a voice transmission talisman? This was something that hadn't ever happened during the past year. Thus Han Li made his way slowly down the path in the garden with a hint of confusion in his heart. There were already over 30 extra thumb-sized lightning beads in his storage bracelet, all of which were shimmering with azure light. Han Li had exhausted most of the heavenly lightning that he'd procured to refine these lightning beads, and if it weren't for Mu Qing's voice transmission talisman, he was preparing to refine all of the heavenly lightning in his heaven void cauldron in one go. When Han Li finally made his way into the hall, he was surprised to discover that not only was Mu Qing seated in the hall, there was a crimson-robed figure sitting off to the side. This crimson-robed figure was none other than Di Shui. "Fellow Taoist, fellow Taoist, Dai Kuk would like to see you," Mu Qing said in a calm voice as she held a teacup in her hand.